Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. Welcome home, y'all. This is episode 105 of Native Land Pod, where we give you our breakdown of all things politics and culture. We are your hosts. I'm Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, Andrew Gillum, and Bakari Sellers, the non-Beyonce of the group.
Let's start over. I don't want to do this in post, but I think I should be. I don't know why I mentioned last, but keep going.
Sellers.
And the show continues. So anyway, we are here to talk to y'all about all the things that are happening right now. Shameless plug really quick. Did an episode with Kamala Harris on Election Night Live in Seattle, Washington from Benaroya Hall. That episode is now up. We hope you all will check it out and let us know what you think. But y'all, what are we getting into today?
Whew. What aren't we getting into? How about this negotiation up in Washington, D.C. around the opening of the government? Who won? Who lost? Who didn't? Where we at? I'm interested.
I agree. Andrew, I'm right there with you. Bakari, Tiff, what y'all got?
Go ahead, Tiff.
No, but I heard in the intro, Bakari does not go last. So
Thank you. Thank you for giving me my due
ladies
respect.
First, ladies first.
No, ladies first.
No, Bakari, in this instance. He'll get it tomorrow. Keep going.
Go ahead, Tiffany.
No, Bakari.
Oh, well,
Bakari,
no, I mean,
we said ladies first.
She was saying ladies first. She's talking about you.
Anyway, I'm going to have all y'all people,
If she
all
was
y'all
talking
stuff.
about me, she would have said bad bitches first. So
Okay.
Moving quickly
Lord.
along.
I'm sorry, Mama. Mrs. Sellers, I'm sorry they had to using this.
Lord, we gonna be
using
back
this-
in trouble with the parents.
using this language. There's a lot going on. I mean, first of all, to piggyback on Andrew's point, we going to get into all of those things, but then the pinky promise with the ACA vote that came up on Tammy Baldwin's piece of legislation. And they've been giving out Michelin stars. I saw a little report recently that a strip club in Charlotte got awarded a Michelin star. I'm checking the veracity of that. And by checking it, meaning I'm going to go in and see if the Michelin star
See about the food, see if it's worth it.
Listen, people got to make their people got to, it's hard out here, man. Get their money. And so I want to make sure I'm contributing in the community.
I look forward to that report, Bakari. Very
Thank you. I
interested.
got you.
Thank
Please
you.
bring evidence. Bring evidence.
Please.
Evidence.
I'm really excited to hear from our viewers every week. I really appreciate people taking time to get on camera and sending us videos, comments, questions, all of that. So I'm excited to hear what you all have to say about this week, and I'm excited for me and the co-host to weigh in.
And lastly, we have a conversation about Donald Trump rigging the 2026 elections. That has been talked about on this show ad nauseum. We even have questioned whether or not we should be telling y'all how many days are left until the election. Joining us for that really important conversation is Ari Berman, an incredible author and a journalist at Mother Jones who wrote a piece on what Donald Trump will do to rig the 2026 elections. Let's get into it, y'all.
All right.
This fight for us is not partisan. It's not a partisan fight. It's a patriotic fight. We're waging this fight on behalf of the American people. The 5 states that are most impacted by a failure to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits are West Virginia, Wyoming, Alaska, Mississippi, and Tennessee. 45% of the people, of the Americans, who are going to lose health care or be at risk of losing health care if they don't, on the other side of the aisle, extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, 45% of them are registered Republicans. 35% registered Democrats, and 20% unaffiliated or independent. This is not a partisan fight for us. It's a patriotic fight.
Okay, everyone. So we are just on the other side of the longest shutdown in government history, 41 days. And the Democrats on the Senate side are being told that they caved, that they folded, and are being called losers, frankly, by a lot of folks throughout this country. But there are other folks who have also been talked about as being losers. Republicans, certainly government workers, the folks who lost out their SNAP benefits, so literally losing, and then all of the folks who would be covered by the Affordable Care Act. That is the whole of America also losing here. So I wanted to have a conversation with my colleagues about who they think the biggest loser is of the government shutdown. So if we were doing a rapid round really quick, what do y'all think? Who is the biggest loser, Andrew?
The American people.
Bakari?
American people.
Tiff?
I'll be quick, but to put it in context of political terms of Republicans versus Democrats, I think it's so disrespectful to the actual losers, and that's the everyday people who are impacted by the shutdown.
She said all that to say just what we
The
said.
American people.
Because I keep hearing a lot of
context.
people saying, like, what does this mean for the Democrats and what does this mean for the path forward? And it's like, I'm thinking about people who ain't got food to eat and who backed up on their mortgage. Like,
Yeah. We were just trying to do a rapid round.
I know,
I'm going to be honest with y'all. It was for social, but we'll do what we can with the clip. What I will say here, too, is I actually think the biggest losers here are all of the staffers who worked hard on an issue and did not get to see what a win might look like. And I think that folks deserve that. So let's get into this conversation. I know that there's a lot behind those short answers. Bakari already has his hands up because he thinks he's at school. That's what happens when you bring toddlers to your podcast platform. Bakari, what do you have?
No, I just watched Andrew struggle long enough to get a question out. So that was me. I'm using the tools.
Take a
I've been
different
watching
tack.
it.
I'm going to take a different tack. Raise your hand.
So, like, I think I just have a question for you all, which is, what did Democrats do it for?
Oh, you want us to answer? I thought there was another profound...
No, that was, I mean, if in fact you have 10 people under the cover of dark, or 8 people under the cover of darkness who vote to end the shutdown, what were the last 40 days for? Like, what was it about? I know what we said it's about, but what's gained? What was gained?
Yeah.
Well, I think those are two different questions.
Okay.
What was gained? Obviously, nothing from my perspective. I mean, they weren't ready for this game, and it was such a disappointment. But what it was about was healthcare, which is a really big deal. For years, for some strange reason, the GOP has had such a hard-on for repealing the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, and more than 24 million people depend on this. And so we're going to see, it's not just majorities, but vast majorities who are facing their healthcare premiums going up by more than 114%. So people are going to be questioning, do I go to the grocery store? Do I go see the doctor? Republicans, control both the chambers. They control the House and the upper chamber in the Senate. And so Democrats had, for the first time, some negotiating power. And so, the Kansas the KFF, they have an analysis out about the average cost of what people are going to be paying for healthcare. It can go up to more than $1,000 for some people. So imagine, for some people, this might be an inconvenience. But if you have a life-threatening illness and you're depending on this is why I think we have to draw the distinction between structural violence, institutional violence, and physical violence. And right now, all of these things are being rained down upon us by the federal government. So I don't want to dismiss the efforts of the Democrats in trying to hold the line for healthcare. Sadly, though, I think they brought a knife to a gunfight. They were too eager to capitulate, and they weren't really ready for this. They could have had kids out there, like get real live people out there, get an 8-year-old standing in front of a camera saying, Donald Trump, I don't have anything to eat because, SNAP didn't come this month. Get somebody sick on camera saying, I don't know if I'm going to be able to live beyond next year to even vote in 2026 because this president, Donald Trump, is threatening to take away my health care. And I feel like they were not ready for the moment. And it is such a colossal disappointment to so many people because they ask us to fight every year. They ask us to show up and vote every year. And when it's time to show up for us, the rising majority, the base for Democrat voters, they don't do it. So I definitely understand the frustration all around. And I appreciate and understand the frustration in your question.
So I'll offer a few thoughts on what I think they did it for. And we can each check the box or not as to whether or not it was accomplished. One, I think they needed to fight. At the point that they declared that they were going to deny the Republicans cloture, the 60 votes that they needed in the U.S. Senate, they basically laid down the gauntlet and said, we're prepared to fight. And I got to tell you, given the members of the Democratic caucus and the U.S. Senate, they range from everything from Republican light to the left of the left of the left, liberal socialists. In the case of Bernie Sanders, who's an independent but caucuses with the Democrats. So the fact that the leader was able to hold together people who cannot stomach a shutdown. I mean, there are members of the Democratic caucus who have decried using the shutdown as a way to make a political point and would never before been in favor of it, who Chuck Schumer got to stick with him for 40 days. And I think the American people needed to see Democrats do something to show that they had a fight to them. And I think in the moment that happened, you saw a lot of people stand up, speak out from everyday people who, quite frankly, I think inspired this shutdown. The people who were showing up at these protests on the streets, who were chasing down ICE, trying to say, get out of our neighborhood, so on and so forth. I think they inspired much of what the members of the elected U.S. Senate did. I think they were successful in bringing a fight. Number two, I'm not sure that the elections of a week ago would have been as successful across the board for Democratic candidates as they were at every level of government, from dog catcher to governor of a state. And not only did Democrats win in many of those places, in many of those places they thumped the Republicans. I mean, rounded laps. Races that were supposed to be too close to call or down to the last minute got called an hour after the polls closed. And in the cases of the two governors, the governor of New Jersey and of Virginia, they got double-digit leads on their opponents when they were not expected to. I think that the shutdown, the energy around the pushback and the fight, helped to inspire people to go to the wall and go to the mat for their elected leadership that they saw was going to the mat for them. And I think finally, I would say the ending of the fight was one that could have easily been anticipated by all of us. You took a caucus who is already reticent to use the shutdown as a political cudgel to move public policy. You had a caucus that did not appear fractured up until the point that they started to negotiate to open the government again. Aside from that, none of us would have been able to name one senator who was trying to open the government up against the caucus's wishes. They pretty much stuck together until after the elections when they couldn't stomach it anymore. But the reason why I say all of us could have predicted the end of this, and quite the way that it ended, is one, no one has ever extracted major public policy concessions from a shutdown. Not Republicans and not Democrats over our history. Two, of the two-party system, Democrats were always going to be the ones who could never stomach a president using children, using the employment of federal workers, using withholding food to families as a weapon against their opponent. We never anticipated a president would be willing to go so far against the American people to prove his political point. But this president was, and we know him to be almost diabolical in formation. So when you compare the two, Democrats were always going to be the ones who had a heart for people. They were always going to be the ones who buckled under the pressure to not see people suffer. And if you're at a negotiating table, you're going to choose the diabolical one as the one who will be the last to fold every single time. Could we have gotten more with longer? I do think that there could have been more extracted here. But I always felt it would end. I don't think they began with an end in mind. I think they began with a fight in mind. And the end would reveal itself over time. And what they decided was, after we thumped folks on Election Day, that presented an opportunity to make this a keystone issue going into the next year's elections. And it was their opportunity for an out. That's my guess.
I think there are a few things. One is, I'm also frustrated with what appears to be the lack of strategy around this particular fight. Andrew, I completely agree with you that we never anticipated, and I'm saying I'm talking about the whole of the American people, never anticipated having someone like this in the White House. But we knew with Project 2025, we knew with Doge, we knew with the last shutdown from his last administration. We knew from the last administration we were dealing with. The last shutdown that was 35 days long, I believe, was over whether or not we were going to pay for a border wall. Yeah. Right? So I want to be very clear about the fact that we knew who the opponent was. The Senate Democrats knew who the opponent was and still did not go to the battle with the right tools. I think the biggest issue here, to your point about what they could stomach, is you have people who are watching folks lose their SNAP benefits, who are watching folks suffer with healthcare premium, letters coming out saying that they're going to soar. They want to make sure people can survive, a serious health crisis and just, engage in practices to prevent a crisis. But the reality of it is they went and said, we're going to hold the line, but they were also errant and I think lacking in compassion when they didn't consider who was on the front line. The people on the front line were those children. The people on the front line were the TSA workers. And I'm not talking about the folks who make six figures or above in the federal government who said, we want you to hold the line. I'm talking about the folks that are members of AFG, right? The American Federation of Government Employees. Those who said, we want you to reopen the government because we need our paychecks. And I'm just saying, when you don't consider the front line in holding the line, you are always going to lose because who's fighting for you at that point? That is where I think the biggest failure was. And it tells us that many people, not just the folks who are in elected office, but we should expect this of our elected officials, are still not clear about what it is going to take to adequately combat the enemy. What do I mean by that? I mean, they are fighting yesteryear's fight with yesteryear's tools. That is not going to work. They are showing you that they are ready and primed and poised and conditioned even, right, to be a resistance party. They are not poised, ready, or prepared to be in opposition. An opposition party would have shut the government down or worked, to oppose the government reopening, really, with 14 votes in and counting, and said, we need to make sure that we have a SNAP mutual aid fund. We need to ensure that we have a fund for people to pull from if they're not getting their paychecks, for housing, for all of these other things. None of that was set up. They have campaign coffers, some of them, where they could have afforded to make donations to nonprofits to keep these people going. That was not done. It wasn't even considered based on the people I talked to. So I don't know what they would have expected, right? Like you're not going to win a long-term fight. And these people don't give a damn. You're hoping to pierce the consciences of folks who don't no longer have them.
Yeah. Bakari, what's your thought?
No, I think that from everything that I've seen, I think that Andrew, you did hit something. And I think that the largest success was elevating the issue of healthcare to the forefront of individuals' minds again. We saw on Tuesday that the number one issue that people faced was the economy, and number two was healthcare. And it seems as if, and number three was a distant immigration. It seems as if Democrats are finally able to hone in on the message surrounding healthcare. Republicans own all those healthcare premiums rising. There's not a fix for it. Those costs are going to go up. And Democrats own the issue of affordability, because I see this White House acting a lot like the Joe Biden White House when it came to issues such as immigration and crime, where Joe Biden, and I was guilty of this as well, simply wanted, we would cite statistics when people were saying that they felt something, that they saw something. And we would be like, but the violent crime rate gone down, X, Y, Z. And people were like, I still don't feel safe. Not on my street. And so you see the Trump White House doing something similar with affordability. So Democrats are winning those two issues. The problem that Angela eloquently and passionately hit on is that when we got out of the game, this week, when we shuttered the doors, we did so without a messaging apparatus. And so now you depressed your base, which was so excited. And now your base is like, what happened? Why? Nobody told us we were going to do this. I mean, if you go out in front of a camera or you go to a city and you're talking to people about there's too much pain in the streets, Democrats are going to be the adults in the room, and we're going to keep up this fight for health care. But we're going to reopen the government because this pain has gotten unbearable for our constituents. We're going to continue to fight. Then maybe you don't have people out here who are struggling to comprehend the reason why. I mean, I think the four of us get the reason why. We understand the intricacies. We understand the ups and downs and all arounds. And we can talk to folk, including United States senators and people like that, to tell us what is going on. But for people who are working every day, who don't have time to scroll X all day long or on Instagram all day long, they just see that the government opened and Democrats didn't say anything. And I think that that is indicative of a problem we've had since Barack Obama, which is even the good things that we do, we don't know how to message them. It's what I tell Black folk all the time. If we don't tell our story, somebody else will. And we have to do a better job, particularly around this issue of sharing our story.
I agree with everything that you guys said, particularly Angela's point around creating an infrastructure when we're in the fight and asking people to hold the line. Like, they're not, the people elected office are not the only people holding the line. The real people holding the line are going to get hurt worse and feel it the fastest, which casts a dark shadow across a lot of other people's lives, mine included, y'all's included. But I disagree with you, Andrew, on this point about the excitement around the elections that we saw. I do not think that was necessarily excitement. I think those voters showed up more as a repudiation against Trump, more than it was excitement about the Democrats fighting. I think it is comparable to how Black people have always maneuvered in this country, this misconception that so many people have about Black folks, that we're these Democratic loyalists, which is not true. The majority of the country was voting in favor of harm reduction, because I can't really think of a united front of Democrats where I've said, like, wow, like, they are great job, guys. Like, they are really kicking ass. And I don't know that a lot of people looked at the shutdown that way, honestly. I mean, I respect your point, but I disagree.
No, it's all good. I think in some people's minds, it isn't the conscious. I won't say that this was consciously on the minds of people, but there are things that happen in the ethos that unconsciously motivate us one way or another. And a lot of people, everyday people, and us on this platform right here, have gone through days where we said, what is it going to take? I feel like there's no way to stop him. I feel like my head's on a swivel. Something's coming at us every single day. And what that drove a lot of people to was resignation. I'll just back up. I'm just going to take care of me, get through my day. And when you see people start to form the formations of a front line, it starts to buck us up a little bit. I think it starts to get us, our spine stiffening. We say, you know what? I'm going back out. I'm going back out. Send me in. I'm going back out. So I think part of it, there were candidates, there's the repudiation, but I don't separate the repudiation from a demonstrated effect of elected leaders going out there and saying, no, we're going to stop it all. Stop all the presses. Everything stops until we get what it is that we want. It would be crazy of us to think, and would be foolish of us to tell the American people that this campaign of the shutdown was going to result in the Republicans, who have voted over 70 times to repeal Obamacare, deciding, okay, this is it. People are hurting, especially the ones I don't care about. And so I'm going to change my position and now go back on my word and my vote of 70 plus times and give these folks.
Let me also say,
I don't know, Andrew. I don't know. Can I just say really quickly?
Sure.
Half of the people in the marketplace for the ACA are in Republican districts. When they
so are the people who are at the epicenter of impact from Trump's actions, right?
I agree.
Republicans,
so could it
and
not
SNAP.
be? And SNAP, precisely.
Of course.
And SNAP. So their constituents are feeling the brunt of this too. Had there been better messaging, forget about partisan politics, had there been better messaging from groups, the Democrats, whichever, where it didn't matter if they voted for a Democrat or not, but you are sending those constituents and their elected leaders saying, hey, I can't fucking feed my family because of what you're doing. I don't give a damn. Instead, a lot of people sat back and let them control the narrative and introduce stupid things like the Democratic shutdown. There was not enough pushback, and it was too many echo chambers regurgitating things that were not accurate, not true. And so people are just sitting around like, I don't know. I mean, the data showed, the polling showed that most people did ascribe blame to the Republicans.
Right.
But I don't think people were ready to seize on that and take the fight to them.
The numbers also started shifting. B, I know you were jumping in here, but I just want to just one other quick point. The numbers in the polling data started shifting towards the middle. It almost felt like our country, from looking at just the numbers, were evenly split. And I got to tell you guys, I started feeling torn myself about not whose fault it was, but whether or not this was the right fight. Because of what Andrew just raised around ACA, they've always voted to repeal and replace Obamacare. They're trying to get to a point where they have Trump Care. Trump Care will be HSAs, health savings accounts, where you're not going to be able to afford chemo, or if you have any other life-threatening emergency, to cover it. Sure, it'll cover your checkup, right? But One Medical for, like, if your leg fucking falls off is not the solution. Shout out to One Medical because I also use it. But I'm just saying.
Who leg falling off?
I don't know. Maybe
People with diabetes.
People
That's
with
not,
diabetes.
that ain't falling off, but yes, I get your point.
Amputated, but
I
I'm
think
just saying.
that-
What?
Go ahead.
Hold on, B, because now you're gonna make me forget. The only thing I was gonna say is, when you're asking people to start caring about something that they have repeatedly told you in multiple Congresses they don't care about, constituents be damned, by the way. I don't know if that was the right fight. I will also say that it was, I already said that. Go ahead, Bakari.
I think it's something a little bit more simple than that. I think Andrew hit on it. I think Tiffany was saying the same thing. And look, we haven't been able to say Democrats were winners in a very long period of time. We also haven't been able to say Democrats were fighters in a very long period of time. Not since 2020, right? That mantra hasn't been something. And people like, I mean, it's very simple. People like winners. People like fighters. And I think both of you all are saying the same thing in different ways. I mean, you're just saying it in the inverse way, because Tiffany's right. But what happened was those Trump voters were depressed on last Tuesday. They didn't get what they were counting on. They just thought that everybody else was going to be persecuted. They just thought Trump was going to come in and shit on everybody else. They didn't realize that he put them all in the toilet together, right? And so you had, to your point, Tiffany, you had a depressed voting base on that side. And a voting base that wasn't excited because they realized that Trump looked at them the same way he looks at us. And then to Andrew's point, you had people who believed whether or not it wasn't about them. And I think you're right about this. It wasn't necessarily about the shutdown. What it was, though, was this movement of energy. And they were just happy to be a part of the fight. They were happy to be a part of energy. And they saw the other side beat down so much. I think sometimes politics is more simple than people give it credit for. The reason why Trump is very successful is because he has pulled off the greatest con in American history. He twice, but he convinced poor people that a man who shits in golden toilets is for them.
More their champion. Yeah.
He is their champion. It's when we look back at history at that simple fact and how he was able to do that so successfully, people are going to be rich writing that book because it's so fascinating. But those same people who he convinced of that, not once, not twice, but 3 times. People forget that he had a lot come out 3 times. Those same people, they finally came to this, they just resigned themselves to not even participating in the process. And I think you saw, in the place you saw that more than anywhere was in Georgia. Because not only did Democrats run up the score in every single county, but you saw Republican strongholds just not even come out. That level of depression, I believe, is something that to be analyzed as well.
Can I just say on the issue?
We all like, go ahead.
What I say wrong? Y'all all jumped over.
It's not what you said
About you,
wrong.
B.
It's nothing what you said wrong. But I am always hesitant to give him so much credit in convincing, poor people that he's their champion, because he didn't do that alone. He had a lot of help. I said last week, the Republican base, they're united in our destruction. So they don't really have to agree on a lot, except that we hate these Black and brown folks and they're stealing from us. 2, I will say this until my death. I don't give a shit if it's etched on my tombstone. The media was willing to accept his narrative. Even now, you hear the media, when they were talking about his beef with Elon, and they were like, well, you've got these 2 alpha males. In what universe is he an alpha male? He is a Mitch if ever we've seen one. I've never seen, he wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. Like there's nobody I know who would say this dude is an alpha male, but they will take that and carry that message. They also have a habit of presenting something that is illogical, non-factual, and then taking a legitimate point and presenting these 2 things to the audience like, okay, guys, have at it. What do you think? So it wasn't that he was some genius communicator. It wasn't that he was so smart. I mean, if you just read the transcripts of some of his speech, if you just watch his debate performance, if you listen to things that he says, when you watch him on the global stage, he is a national and international embarrassment. So I don't think he has this charisma. I think what is so seductive to America, and this makes it harder to beat. So I don't know how we beat this, and I don't want to depress our audience and sound resigned. But what is so seductive to the American people is the power of whiteness. So Trump might die, but Trumpism is alive and well. Because if you can be white adjacent, if you can abandon your people and get favor on their side of the divide, that will always appeal to low-level, incurious people who are willing to cut their nose off to spite their face, even if it means they're going to hurt themselves. If it hurts us, they're okay with that.
So let me clarify my point real quick, because I do think, and I just disagree with you, Tiffany, because I do think that I think we all have this resignation that we don't like the man, like a disgust, right? For what he stands for, how he carries himself, how he treats people. But what I'm talking about is the candidate that Trump was. Now, mind you, he used racism as political currency in a fashion that we have not seen in a very long time, right? Not only is he racist, but he used racism as currency.
Yes.
And what I mean by that for people who are listening is I recall being in the studio one day when he was being interviewed by Jake Tapper, and they were asking him to disavow David Duke. It was a Sunday. And he was like, man, I don't even know who that is.
I remember that.
But what was happening on Tuesday was Mississippi was voting in their Republican primary, right? And so there was always this, how do we use this racism as politics? But there was also something else about Donald Trump that a lot of poor folk, a lot of poor white folk, a lot of people gravitated to. One, he has this perception of wealth. He has this. Now, we know he done been bankrupt 37 million times, all this other stuff. It's this perception of wealth. He also gave off this perception of I'm a winner, right? He talked about it all the time. I'm a winner, you're a loser. I'm a winner, you're a loser. It's very, very simplistic. But he also gave out this, if I'm wealthy, I can teach you how to be wealthy. I'm strong, I can teach you how to be strong. And it was very simple messaging that resonated to those same people that came out and voted for him. I mean, 80 million people voted for this guy. 80 million. And we have to wrestle with the why. I mean, I just think we can't discount the why of that. And it's not giving him props, because I refuse to do that. But what I am saying is as a candidate, and something we even saw recently in this kind of pull and tug of SNAP and healthcare benefits, et cetera, is the why people voted for him also leads to the disappointment they're facing today.
Yeah.
Can I just add,
especially because,
Angela,
yeah.
before you go to Bakari's last point on the why people feel more connected, because there have been successful, wealthy people who run, all of them been wealthy and successful that have run for president. The difference is I actually think he reflects for them like that guy's like me. Right, he overdoses on McDonald's and cheeseburgers and Happy Meals or whatever it is that they say about him. He is, to use the term from Tiffany, sort of incurious in all ways. Right, he doesn't care about the nuance.
Man, he dumb.
Of the difference. He is dumb, but he's not, because he knows the difference.
True.
I don't know if he's dumb.
No, he knows the difference. But what he does is he play dumb, and he speak dumb. And he portrays himself like, if you're sitting at home and you are one of those people who are like all of us, who aspire to one day have the means for everything you want and need without a care in the world, this man has, or demonstrates to have, everything he needs and have not a care in the world. But he also looks like he may have come from around the block down the street, across the track. And there's a relatability to that, because the majority of them are that too. Not just the majority are recipients of food stamps, which I'm not shaming. I had them growing up as well. So I'm not shaming that. I'm simply saying this is a guy who looks like he may have started from the bottom. Now he's there. Even though he started with $1 million loan from his daddy, flushed that away and got more, we know the story. However, it connotes something else when it's him, and you can't fake it. It is what it is, and it has electoral persuasion. What may distance them at some point is if their shit gets bad enough where they have to reach up, look up for an alternative. But the heat ain't come strong enough yet. It still hasn't come.
I feel like the alternative piece is what's missing. And I think that is where the opposition, if they will rise to the occasion, are currently failing.
Yeah.
So on that, I don't know if they picked the right issue. To your point, Andrew, voting 70, 80 times to repeal and replace something, taking it to the Supreme Court how many times? Like, this is probably not the thing that they're going to agree with you on. They called it Obamacare. We called it Obamacare because we were celebrating. They called it Obamacare because they're racist. Like, it's just that simple. And so,
Angela, can I disagree with you just on this point, which is I think it may have been the wrong issue to get a negotiated settlement with Republicans,
Yes.
but the right issue for the American people, because it is
Maybe.
cross-partisan in the sense that
Correct.
everybody has to deal with healthcare
Correct.
costs. When
And-
those premiums come down, we all got to see them. We all got to pay for them. Those people on the exchange, they all got to deal with it, and it's cross-partisan. That's why Speaker designee Lord Jesus,
Jeffries.
New York Jeffries has said this is nonpartisan. This is nonpartisan, this fight.
Of course, and that's how we opened the show with Hakeem Jeffries' clip saying it's a nonpartisan fight. However, if people are still moving their issues aside and what is in their best interest aside to side with someone who is highly partisan in this area and to vote against their interests, I think therein lies the problem. Even, Bakari, I know you wanted to bring up Tammy Baldwin's amendment in the Senate that was voted down. The one thing that Democrats have been asking for the last 2 weeks is at least this messaging vote so they get Republicans on the record. Just so we're really clear and we're not ever accused of lying to the American people, that has been the play for 2 weeks. That has been the play for 2 weeks. They were willing to open the government back up with at least 8 Democrats in the Senate for a messaging vote. And that still wouldn't have been a win for the American people. Mike Johnson, when challenged on Jake Tapper's show yesterday, says that he's not willing to commit to considering these subsidies again, even after the House reconsiders this, it's not clean, but their version of a clean continuing resolution. He's not committing to considering a bill that would reinstate these healthcare subsidies.
But now he's not
That is a
committing.
problem.
Well, before
He's
we
not
move
committing,
on,
but it's
Tim-
not just to Democrats. He is now telling the American people who now side with this issue that I can't afford what is coming down the pike. And the Speaker of the House, Republican, is telling you, I don't give a damn. We're
I hope
still
it matters
moving
this
forward.
time. I hope
Well,
it
just because
goddamn matters
not
this time.
everybody knows what the Tammy Baldwin amendment is. So, Bakari, did you just want to?
Yeah, he was gonna talk
Oh,
about
yeah,
it.
no, it just extended the subsidies for 1 year, which is the bare bones minimum that people were asking for. So that for 1 year, you would have those subsidies. And there was a question of whether or not the subsidies should be paid directly to the insurance company or be paid to the person. That's a cute little legitimate inside the Beltway fight that people are having. I have to dig a little deeper on my analysis to see where I land. But the fact is the subsidies are needed to drive down costs. Andrew.
And that amendment failed in the Senate.
Oh, it failed across party lines. We didn't even get one Republican. But Andrew,
it's partisan.
Andrew was right. And again, I feel like I'm like learning how to mediate you guys because Andrew was right and Angela was right too. Like it's politically, it's a no-win issue. And
That's
we know
right.
that for every reason that Andrew said. But politically, in terms of political constituencies, it's a win-win issue. You're never going to get them to change on this. However, because the issue is so transcendent, it talked to the end. Democrats won on changing the political conversation. Very rarely. I mean, you got to remember, a year ago, we were trying to figure out what bathrooms people could use. We were talking about.
Sure.
We weren't. They were.
Right.
But it was monopolizing, right? You remember you had the ad.
Yeah,
You
they
had
ran
the-
ads for it.
They ran ads on it. I mean, that was an ad leading up to the election. This was the conversation that was being had, right? And now the conversation in the prism whereby people are evaluating their elected officials it's hard to do it, but they were able to parallel park a submarine. They were able to literally shift the political discourse and conversation to things that are substantive that we win on, like healthcare. I just think that is the win, and I think that we just have to take that. Now the question is, and like always, where do we go from here? I mean, that is the question that I struggle with all the time. It makes my anxiety rage.
Well, I suggest
'Cause
they should not let up. If now affordability in healthcare is where we want people to be thinking and deciding when it comes to elections, then where to your point, Angela, where the strategy must not fail us, must not fail Democrats, is in the time between now and the time between the next election of when it is really pivotal to make the decision of whether or not we're about to keep charging forward with this man or bring his administration to a pretty much halt. That's what's on the ballot in the midterms. And unfortunately, my level of what I expect from a candidate is like at the fucking bottom.
Oh, yeah, mine's below the floor.
Wait,
Oh,
can
God.
I ask y'all? I know
Below the floor.
we have to close this out, but I have a quick for real rapid round. Especially and Tiff, weigh in here too if you want. But Bakari and Andrew, because you all
Oxtails.
are
What's the
former-
question? I'm sorry.
Because you guys are formerly elected officials, I want to know if you were in the United States Senate today, or really yesterday and the day prior, what would you have been, don't answer, what would you have been thinking in the caucus meetings? And then how would that thought, that strategy, that idea have translated to the Senate floor? How would you have voted?
So that's not a rapid round answer. I got
to do your best,
but I'm gonna do my Tiffany Cross right here. And then when Tiffany lean up into the camera, let me do some context for the people. So I in all likelihood I would have voted to reopen government on the condition that we message around the why, because I am in the streets enough to see the pain that this shutdown is causing. And I've seen it at the airports, and I know people aren't getting paid, and that gives me consternation. But the only way that I wouldn't have done it in the middle of the night. The only way I would have done it is if I would have been able to either myself clearly articulate the why, or as a caucus, we clearly articulate the why. That would be the only way that I would do it.
I would have, in the caucus, probably argued more for politicos will get this, but what about the everyday people who we asked to sacrifice? They won't get this. They won't understand the why. And they will likely be let down by the fact that last Tuesday they thought they voted for a change around the country. And this looks like the same old, same old. I would not have voted to open the government. What I would have done, and I would have done this from the start, is I would have identified the most vulnerable 8 Republicans I could, the most vulnerable in the U.S. Senate, to go to places where, maybe there were split tickets, right? They voted a Democratic governor and maybe a Republican president, whatever. But those 8 seats those senators would have been under duress. Their communities would have responded so much because we would have been dialing ads into there. We would have had a volunteer operation that was making calls into homes. We would have, it won't be AstroTurf. It may have began as AstroTurf because it would have come out of the Beltway, but it would have been serious activation in those places, so those senators would have had no choice. I have been on plenty of votes, and the ones that have caused me the greatest stomach pain are when the calls and the emails and the letters to the editors start to flood. And hell, it may have been from the same 500 people. I wouldn't have known. It would have felt like the whole world had collapsed on my shoulders, and it would have cost me all my loyalties to make sure that what I was in line for was to be on the right side of this issue. And I think from a strategic standpoint, that may have been the failure is you know how we say on television, you're not talking to the person I'm right directly across from. I'm talking to people who are through that lens. That's what we're not talking to our colleagues up here. Yes, the negotiation requires an action from them, but we're talking past them. We are talking to the American people, and we're talking to these people in these 8 particular places that their folks are right now trying to do a shuck and drive. They're trying to steal. They're taking your livelihood away right now in public daylight, and we got to go get them. And I would have sick them on them, right? As we said with dog, I'll go sick them, sick the people on them. And I think they failed by trying to talk to all of them. They failed to talk to 8 of them, and that's what we needed.
Tiff, Andrew just said that they would have done a shuck and drive. I signed us up for that. That sounded it sounded like a drive-by shooting. So sign me and Tiff up for that part. I'm serious. I signed us up for that. We're not for that. Not literally, but figuratively, because I think we riding on these fools.
I'm
not
telling you,
literally, not literally.
But I'm with you on all fours.
I can't even get the point out. You're gonna make it so much worse.
No, because I'm gonna be in the interrogation room snitching. All they got to do is feed me. I'm telling you.
We know, Bakari, it don't take much for you. But the thing that I was gonna
give me some Chick-fil-A.
He missed the point about no process. I'm trying my best. These Negroes. Well, all I was trying to say was, I believe, and Tiff, maybe I'm not going to speak for you, but I believe we would have been on the side of the caucus that would have us stand up mutual aid efforts and support for the people on the front line. And then we can make a decision about whether or not the government it can reopen. Hopefully we can hold out. But you can't have people holding out and suffering. Then you're just making... Okay, everybody, we're going to get to that listener question later on in this episode. But right now, it is our pleasure and privilege to welcome to Native Land Pod Ari Berman, an incredible journalist and author, to talk to us about Donald Trump rigging the 2026 elections and perhaps the presidential as well. Ari, before we bring you on, I just want to roll this clip from Steve Bannon.
And I will tell you right now, as God is my witness, If we lose the midterms and we lose 2028, some in this room are going to prison, myself included. They're not going to stop. They are getting more and more and more radical. And we have to counter that. And what do we have to counter it with? We have to counter it with more action, more intense action, more urgency. We're burning daylight. If you look across every aspect of this, we have to codify what President Trump has done by executive order.
So wanted to get into this first, Ari, because if you let Steve Bannon tell it, he's making it seem like we're the riggers. We're going to be the one who are going to rig the 2026 elections, and they're going to go to jail because, I don't know, maybe the January 6th insurrectionists never did and got pardoned. So I wanted to just bring you on, Ari. You have always been doing incredible work around the voting rights space, voter suppression. This piece that you wrote for Mother Jones recently on Project 2026, Trump's plan to rig the next election. Would love to talk to you about how you're seeing this, particularly after the pardons this week. So we'll talk about the pardons as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, for having me on. Really a pleasure to be here. And you notice how Steve Bannon has a new jacket, another jacket on every time? Like he used to have 3 layers, and now it seems like he has 4 or 5 every time he talks.
He might be selling them if he's Trump as a gimmick.
And didn't he already go to prison? So he's saying
did.
we're going to go to prison, but I think he's already been there. So he must be worried about a return trip. But I think what I learned from 2020 and just the crazy attempt to try to steal the election was we have to take these people seriously. I think a lot of people thought when they started throwing out all these schemes that like originally they were joking and it wasn't going to happen. And then momentum just started building. And so when they say they're going to do these kind of things, when they say they're going to seize voting machines, or they're going to put ICE at the polls, or they're going to declare a national emergency over elections to give Trump more power, I think we have to take all of these things seriously. And what's different about Trump's second term compared to his first term is he has figured out how to use the full power of the federal government to his advantage. And they're much more open about what their plan is. They're not trying to hide their authoritarianism anymore. It's right out in the open. And they're basically saying, we know we're going to lose this election if we don't rig it in our favor. That's why he's going all out to gerrymander and doing all these other things. So I think the plan is really, as opposed to being done in the shadows, it's really out in the open in terms of what they're planning to do. Now the question is it going to work, and are people going to be able to stop it?
Well, we're seeing this week, Ari, and I want to echo Angela in saying I love your beat, you covering voting rights for Mother Jones. And please, people, subscribe, read the piece. Journalism costs money, so please support journalism. But we saw this week that Donald Trump pardoned dozens of people allegedly tied to overturning or attempting to overturn the 2020 election. He pardoned Ed Martin, a Justice Department attorney, Jenna Ellis, of course, Giuliani, Mark Meadows, his former chief of staff. Now, this was federal pardons. Of course, there are prosecutors in Nevada, Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, and I think another state I can't remember off the top of my head. So he can't pardon those states' elections. But I don't think enough people really understand the concept of how he's consolidated power to the executive branch. In March of this year, he issued an executive order that essentially, there are 3 key pieces to this that I find very concerning, and I want to get your thoughts on them. The 3 components. First, there's this show your papers type initiative where you would have to show a passport or something similar to show that you're registered to vote using a federal voter registration form. That's very scary. Second, he attempts to make a bipartisan commission, very partisan, the EAC, which oversees voting equipment. And he wants to access these voting machines, which obviously that is a very pronounced risk. It can also push states to do hand counting of ballots, which is error prone, as we know. It can cause delays, which I think is very intentional. Third, this is the most frightening of all these frightening components. He's calling for DOJ, this made-up department, and the Department of Homeland Security, led by the puppy killer Kristi Noem, to obtain state voter files and other records kept by election officials. That's including voter list maintenance records. This is a very frightening thing. Now, you remember what happened when they gave DOJ access to the NRLB, the National Relations Board system. We immediately saw Russian IP addresses making several attempts to access that database. So putting this in the hands of Elon Musk is very scary. So when you look at the collection of what he's done already, I'm curious your thoughts on how we as regular people, what we should be doing to combat that, and what do you think the next steps are in this very draconian, scary process?
Yeah, those are all really good questions, Tiffany. I mean, I think the first thing is just to go back to what you said about the pardons. People are looking at it as a get out of jail free card for what happened in 2020. But it's not just that. It's a get out of jail free card for future election stealing.
Yes.
Because basically the message is, if you try to steal the next election through violence and force and intimidation and illegality, we're going to have your back here too. So the pardons aren't just backwards looking, which I think that's how it's been reported. They're forward looking as well. They're trying to send a signal to all the insurrectionists who now are off the hook, basically absent state courts, that they can do the same kind of thing in 2026 or 2028 without any kind of accountability. Now, again, we'll see if that holds up, but that's clearly why he's doing it now, to send a signal that this kind of behavior can happen in future elections. Now, on to your points about the executive order. These were all really good points. First off, on proof of citizenship to register to vote. This is a real misconception because people say, oh, it's just voter ID. It's not voter ID. People carry around their driver's license with them, most places. People do not carry a passport or a birth certificate around with them when they register to vote in their day-to-day lives. And a lot of people don't have those documents to begin with. And if you don't have those documents, like a birth certificate, it can be very difficult, if not impossible, to obtain them. And so you guys know very well, there are people that were born in the Jim Crow South, couldn't go to a hospital, never got a birth certificate they could use in the kind of functional way we think about it. So it's much more draconian than voter ID. A lot more people don't have it. A lot more people will fall through the cracks if it's required. The good news is that part of the law at least has been blocked by a federal court. Now they're still going to appeal it, but for now it's blocked in court. The second thing is what you said about the EAC, which is kind of this obscure body that was created after the 2000 election fiasco in Florida to try to help states run their elections more smoothly. It's not really functioning that way. And you mentioned the voting machines. This is really important. Basically, what Trump said in his executive order from March was that essentially all the current voting machines are not certified anymore, and that they need to be certified based on technology that doesn't actually exist on the market right now. And this is important because this could be a pretext to Trump doing things like he wanted to do in 2020, seizing the voting machines, saying the elections were rigged, saying that we didn't vote on proper voting machines, and therefore we have to do X, Y, and Z to try to overturn the election. At the same time that people in his administration, the Justice Department, are going around asking states, can we access your voting equipment from 2020, which is totally unprecedented for anyone from the federal government trying to do. Remind me what the third question was.
That's about essentially putting state election sensitive data in the hands of Elon Musk. DOJ, yes.
Yeah. So they're really actively trying to do this now. Remember, it was a huge deal when Trump, he lied and said that he lost the popular vote in 2016 because 3 million people voted illegally. And then he had this whole quote unquote election integrity commission. And they asked for voter file data from all 50 states. And they were rebuked overwhelmingly. The Mississippi Secretary of State famously told the vice chair, Chris Kobach, to go jump in the Gulf of Mexico, back when Republicans still called it that. And now they're basically trying to do the same thing through the Justice Department, but it's getting far less attention. So they're trying to get voter data from all 50 states so they can run them through these immigration databases that are not designed for this purpose. So they can get a lot of false matches and basically say, we have found the fraud. We have found the non-citizen voting that Trump said exists. And therefore, we can call on states to enact proof of citizenship laws. We can remove people from the rolls. We can file new lawsuits, all of those things. And this is happening, unlike in Trump's first term, very much under the radar. The Justice Department's already sued 8 states, 7 of which are run by Democrats trying to get this kind of data. So this is something that I'm still actively reporting on that I'm very concerned about, because it's going to seem very technical. It's going to seem very bureaucratic. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see these insane headlines saying that all these people illegally voted. And then Trump and the whole MAGA universe are going to go nuclear around this evidence. And so I'm just saying, prepare for this to happen, because they're laying the groundwork right now for them to do so.
I'm glad you went there, Ari. I was thinking about their first administration attempt to get that data, and I do remember feeling hopeful by the number of secretaries of states and governors who stood up and said, no way. You know, one of the things that I've said on this show when we talked about elections being stolen, that kind of thing, was I've always fallen back on or relied on the fact that, you know, our elections are probably one of the most decentralized structures of infrastructure in the United States, meaning the power exists at almost such a local level, from your county supervisors of elections, you know, up through the ranks of the, you know, and through the states, and that the law, I believe, should come down on the side of the states every single time when in contradiction with the federal government over the way in which it runs its elections. That being said, I'm curious if the president is this time able, because he has figured out ways and is manipulating the powers of the presidency, declaring emergencies and so on and so forth, and is able to secure voting equipment from states. For instance, we know he wanted to direct the military to go in and seize the actual voting machines and ballots. If you were forecasting out, assuming he were able to successfully be allowed to seize the voting equipment or voting data, those are two separate, voting equipment very specifically, or ballots from states. Are there states that you would list as sort of flag, you know, burning red, as in if they were able to corrupt this system, that's the kit and caboodle? Are there states that ought to be perking up, thinking about, and I'm very specifically thinking about states that might go D or R, or are reliably D, that may or may not have Democratic secretaries of state or Democratic governors to fend back against that kind of federal attack?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Andrew, I can think of one state that you're very familiar with, the state of Florida, that I think would love nothing else but to help Trump accomplish this kind of a state that has already criminalized voting in so many different ways, that in many ways was a precursor to a lot of what Trump is trying to do, because, I mean, they gave people the right to vote, and then they basically said, we're going to turn you into criminals simply for exercising your right to vote, and did so in a very intimidating way. So I think that you're right, that Trump is going to run into a lot of resistance in terms of his plan to try to just take over the election system, because there's built-in protections. The courts have said that he doesn't have the power to tell Congress and the states how to run their elections. There are election officials in both parties that have pushed back against these efforts. As far as I'm aware, only 2 states so far, Wyoming and Indiana, have willingly given their voter files to the Justice Department. So it's unnerving that that's happened, but it hasn't been like all of the red states have come forward and say, we want to do this to you, give this to you. Similarly, when they tried to ask for voting equipment in Missouri, a very red state, in rural counties, they were told, no, that's not how it works. So I am hopeful that the coalitions that stood up to defend democracy in 2020 still exist in some form or other, in a bipartisan or nonpartisan way. But I am concerned about the pressure here, that if Trump just kind of grounds people down. So even if they say no once, they say no twice. We saw this with the gerrymandering, right? When he wanted states to start gerrymandering, Republicans didn't actually want to do it. Texas Republicans didn't want to do it. Missouri Republicans didn't want to do it. North Carolina Republicans may have wanted to do it a little bit more. But the point is that eventually they complied. And so the question is, are they going to comply in the same kind of way, or will this be beyond the pale? The reason for hope, Andrew, is that they may say, if we do it now, it's going to set a precedent.
Every Democrat.
And we may not want this being weaponized against us in the other direction, right? And the thing about Trump is, what's going to happen is, as he becomes more popular, he is going to become more authoritarian. But he will be a less effective authoritarian, the more unpopular he becomes. Meaning that if people see him as a lame duck, as if people see him, we know that the Republicans aren't going to do the right thing based on principle, right? But they might do the right thing based on politics, which is they want to save their own ass. And so if they start to see that becoming a reality, they may say, we're not going to go along with some of the more extreme things that he's trying to ask us to do.
Got it.
I want to get back to this pardon piece. So on November 9th, Ed Martin tweeted out this laundry list of 77 individuals that Donald Trump wanted to pardon. As you all know, Ed Martin serves as the pardon attorney for the Department of Justice. So he's saying this is a very important pardon list of the 2020 electors. We call them the fake electors, as Tiff was referenced earlier. He listed particularly Georgia and Michigan fake electors in this laundry list. What I find fascinating, Ari, is this list that, again, Ed Martin puts out November 9th. The last time the DOJ clemency and pardon webpage was updated was on November 10th. But somehow they didn't put this up. It just so happens to be while we're in a government shutdown. And I think what is disheartening is the way in which they move. They will spread certain messages to their base, but they don't move necessarily in great transparency. And so when I think back to your piece and some of the different flags that you kind of raised, that would be the ways that Donald Trump would rig a midterm election and the administration and the people who support him, the folks who could have told him, no, we're not going to do this, but fold to him every time. We're talking about folding today. It's not just Democrats who fold, y'all, right? These Republicans haven't launched much of an opposition to stave off Donald Trump's authoritarianism. So when you talk about the ways in which he's using ICE and federal law enforcement to flood the streets, the ways in which they would undermine the integrity of elections, the ways in which they've weaponized the Department of Justice against his political opponents, even naming Barack Obama as of late. I think he would be probably not able to be prosecuted given the criminal immunity now that the Supreme Court has given to presidents. But I just want to hear from you on this. How do you think these pardons also go to support the piece that you put out around Project 2026 and Trump rigging elections?
Well, I think it just sends a signal to people that they can get away with this kind of election rigging, that if they try to do it again, they won't face any consequences for their kind of actions. And therefore, it's going to embolden them to try to do some of these more extraordinary themes. You know, I started reporting this article over the summer, and I was asking people like, hypothetical questions. What could the president do? These hypotheticals became much less hypothetical over time when Trump started sending the National Guard to places, not just California, but started sending them to DC and Chicago and other places, and basically started focusing only on Democratic cities and urban areas in terms of where he would send troops. Then when the Supreme Court said ICE could engage in racial profiling, and then you had people like Steve Bannon say, we're going to have ICE at the polls. So these kind of things are not theoretical anymore. And it's very possible, if not likely, you're going to have the military engage in some kind of election activity that has never happened before in American history, that you could have ICE raids in Democratic neighborhoods. You could have ICE at the polls. I'm not saying any of this stuff will be legal, but I think they're going to try to explore these kind of things. They're going to try to say, for example, that they want to see the voting machines. The last part of my piece was about just refusing to swear in people altogether. Yeah. Well, we saw that happen too. I mean, we've never seen a situation where someone has had to sit this long to be sworn in. And people saying, why do they care? Are they this worried about the Epstein files? And to me, it wasn't just about Epstein. It was about the fact that they are laying the groundwork for if the House is contested, if it's within a seat or two, for example, and there is a member from California or another state where Trump alleges fraud, they're going to try to say, we don't have to sit this person so that Mike Johnson can remain Speaker of the House. Now, again, we don't know if they're going to get away with it, but they're laying out the groundwork to do so right now. And so all of these things that might have been hypotheticals, they're becoming very real. And I think that's why we all need to really pay attention to what's going on as it happens in real time.
Quick question: how do we talk about
I'm seeing
this
another familiar face on the
I love you, man. They don't even. I ain't even want to tell them that we
They don't
OGs.
give you an introduction anymore.
We go way back. I mean, we've been in these streets fighting in these voting booths for a long time. Let me ask you this question: how do we talk about this without depressing voter turnout?
Yeah, that's a really good.
I mean, that's why
question.
I'm here, Ari. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
asked them.
you've thought about that probably more than I have. I mean, I think I think you have to activate people about the threats that they face, but I think you also have to say that people can overcome them, people can do something about them, and that you're raising awareness not to scare people, but to try to activate them. And that's what I said earlier, which is that as Trump becomes more unpopular, he will become more authoritarian. But his authoritarianism will be easier to defeat because he's more unpopular. So I do think that the elections Tuesday send a signal that Trump can be defeated, that Trumpism can be defeated. I also think it sends a signal that there were some problematic aspects to the voting, bomb threats called into polling places, for example. But by and large, voting went smoothly. And so I think that can be something that you can build on. And I think it goes back to the message at the protests around the country, which is that the president doesn't have the power of a king, that he might want to do all of these things, but that he doesn't actually have the power to do so. And that the way to prevent him from doing these kind of things is to check his power. So I would argue it's going to be much harder for Trump to try to steal the election in 2028, either for himself or for whoever his successor might be, if there's a Democratic House, than if there isn't, right? Because if Trump is constantly looking over his shoulder, if he knows that there's some level of accountability coming, then he's going to be less likely to try to pull off these schemes than if the government's stacked with his enablers. But I also think, Bakari, I mean, to just ignore it doesn't seem like the answer either, because if he's going to do these things regardless, then I feel like you have an obligation to fight him. And you look at the gerrymandering battles, for example. Mm-hmm. I mean, Democrats could have just said, like, we're fucked. Like, we're completely screwed. Like, they're just going to go state by state by state and gerrymander. And that's what they did initially. And then California said, no, we're going to come up with something creative to try to check them. And then once California came up with something creative, Virginia started saying, well, we're going to come up with something creative too, to try to do something about it. And now the gerrymandering wars, in which the GOP won the first 3 or 4 battles, is looking much more like a draw than an outright victory, potentially. And so I think that's the example of how you can take something that ultimately is scary to people, can demobilize people, but then use it to try to activate them to realize that the right to vote is still worth fighting for.
Ari, can I just double down on that point? I think it's so important. We oftentimes take away the brilliance of everyday American people to not be able to balance multiple things at one time. And my fear is that when we don't bring these things out into the sunlight, right, into transparency, people end up getting stunned by what they end up walking into. And when they're stunned or they're shocked, they tend to recess, not go headstrong through it. And so I think we talk about it as often, as frequently, and as empowering as we can, so to prevent people from showing up at a poll and seeing the National Guard and deciding, oh no, back up, reverse, I'm out of here. I don't know what this is about, but I'm leaving. It's best we tell them what to expect so they persist, hopefully, and charge right through it in full command of what their rights are to vote and to win. Sorry, Angela, you got it.
No, I just wanted to say, Ari, thank you so much for joining us. Ari Berman, you are incredible. We are so grateful to have you and your brilliance on Native Land Pod. We hope this will not be the last time you join us, but certainly there are going to be voting rights fights on every side, and we would have no other person that we'd rather be in that battle with than you. So thank you so much for being here.
Great to talk to you guys. Thanks a lot.
Welcome home, brother.
Welcome home, Ari. All right, everybody. It is that time of the show where we are getting to action. These are our calls to action. And this time, because we don't want to spend too much time asking you all to come in, send your videos, send us your thoughts and questions, we are going to yield some of our calls to action time to viewer questions. So let's get started.
The podcast gave me a headache. Stephen A. Leonard is a provocateur. He's a minstrel, and all he did was ask you questions. He didn't add anything to the conversation. How do we get these Black men to realize that Black women, this is why we're dying young, they're expecting one person to do everything and to talk to everybody. Our community is not a monolith, and we have never been this kumbaya loving thing where the women all talk to everyone and go on everyone's podcast. No. How do you communicate that to them? It's not about the people who agitate each other talking, because two agitated people are never gonna, or it just doesn't work. I send you so much love, because that was just tough and hard.
What's up, Native Land? This is Craig. I just saw the recent episode. I thought it was brilliant with Charlamagne the God and everybody that was on the panel. And I just wanted to say, this topic really resonated with me because I feel like at times I've been on both sides of that Black intellectual versus, the view of the everyday guy. I've been on both sides of that. There have been times when I felt like I was out of place in both arenas. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciate this episode. It really made me think about a lot of things in a different way. And I just want to say I appreciate y'all and welcome home.
Well, thank you guys for taking the time. I don't know if there was a question in that, so forgive me. I think the first woman was asking, I'm not sure what she was asking. I think she was saying, how do we communicate to provocateurs what Black women do? Sorry if I have anything about what you were saying wrong. But what I appreciate is the conversation that this sparked in so many spaces. My dentist, who's like a really close friend of mine, Dr. Richard Forjor, was telling me that people were in his chair telling him, they didn't know that we even knew each other, talking to him about the conversation. So no matter where you fall on whichever side of the divide, I really appreciate everybody tuning in and listening. And I still maintain my thoughts. Like I said, my thoughts don't sway in the wind of public opinion. The first time that I respond to something based on public opinion, I'm a slave to those thoughts, and it would, take away the integrity I have. I do my thinking about a thing before I say it. So I am glad that other people had so many strong thoughts about it, and I hope the conversations continue.
Well, I'm just gonna weigh in here. I really want to get Black folks to the point where we can have disagreements without name calling. The ad hominem attacks are unnecessary. I think they're divisive. I don't think that and I'm particularly talking to the first sister, you don't have to call somebody a minstrel or a minstrel show or whatever. It's just unnecessary. You can disagree with someone. You can say that they were factually inaccurate. You can say, this is something that I think encourages people to go a different way, whatever. But I don't like that. It makes it hard for me to respond to the substance of the question when I hear an ad hominem attack. I try very, very hard not to engage in those. I will say that one thing I value very much about our show, my conversations with my brother Leonard, is I am stretched often to reconsider my position, to think through things. To Tiff's point, I don't think it means I'm blown by public opinion or swayed by public opinion, but I do think hearing different perspectives informs my opinion. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you, Craig, who said, I've been on both sides of this, brother. I'm with you. I've been on both sides of it too. I get it. So I'm appreciative of those thoughts. And I hate that the podcast was difficult for anyone to hear, but I hope that we don't run away from these conversations. The math ain't math and without the whole of us. So we don't have time for any mathematics that would cause us to divide and subtract in this moment.
Can I just ask a quick question? Because I hear you about the name calling, but I just wonder if that line slides, because I know I've turned a phrase before in talking about people. And certainly, like on this podcast, frequently you call like Clarence Thomas a hoochie. And I think you're right. I think you nail it. I think that's very accurate. Do you, is there a line where it's like, it's okay for these people who are on this side of the divide where you can say that? Or do you feel like, well, I'm not going to refer to Clarence Thomas that way anymore? Which I hope you always do, because I don't think it's name calling. I think sometimes it's an accurate description.
Let me clarify. Thank you for that question, Tiff. I'm always going to rest squarely in the fact that I'm a human with hypocrisy, right? I got
Shit,
blind spots.
I
A
ain't never
blind
heard
spot I
nobody. I
definitely
ain't never heard nobody
have.
say that out
Like,
loud,
well,
and
I'm
I'm
just-
stealing it because that is a beautiful statement. Like, shit.
It is so true, and I hate the fact when we issue these purity tests that we can't pass ourselves. Like, we talk about people all the time on the show that don't get to come on and defend themselves. We had a conversation last week where it was like, oh, well, this person's not on to defend themselves. So we have these blind spots. Here's my real blind spot. Toms. I reserved the right to call a Tom. Now, other than that, I'm going to try to disengage from ad hominem attacks. I think that Black people who are striving for the betterment and liberation of Black people, I do not want to call names. So that is really what I mean. Can I be pushed on that? I'm open to it. So I'd love to be challenged. I'd love to hear from people who are like, we want you to exist at a higher vibration system. I'm open to it right now. I'm higher vibration, but I got a petty side that comes around every hour. So I'm willing to be stretched there for sure.
Somebody's time
Andrew's
is another
face.
person's menstrual. You know, like she might feel strongly about her position.
I'm not going to do that. So one, again, Leonard I'm not going to let anybody call y'all out your name to me ever. So Leonard is my brother. Y'all are family to me. I'm not doing that. Like, that is a hard line in the sand for me. I don't play about it. Me and him will go toe-to-toe rumble on policy stuff, on strategy all the time. Do not call him out his name to me and think I'm not going to say that about it.
So, Andrew, do you have a call to action today? I don't know. Welcome to the show, brother.
I'm sorry, guys.
We have more to say, but I appreciate both callers' perspectives, and thank you for sending it in. And, you know, they have a right to say what they want, but, you know, people have a right to respond.
You still
Andrew,
muted
you are
yourself.
on mute because you still singing, probably.
Andrew, take it off mute. Andrew, take it off mute.
Bakari, you go, because Andrew is... So, Bakari, you had a call to action. What's yours? I know you wanted to talk about veterans.
Nah, man, I just think that you cannot live in this world and not appreciate those individuals and give people their flowers while they're living, or those individuals who passed are some of our unsung heroes. My grandfather passed away, Reverend E.W. Williamson, decades ago, but he was a World War II Army chaplain. It's those type of stories about the faith that led us. And so I didn't really care what nobody was talking about. I just wanted to make sure that I honored my family and lifted up those people who sometimes don't get the credit they deserve in spaces they deserve it.
Do we, I know that we were talking about another listener question for a call to action. Are we doing another question, y'all?
Happy to, yeah.
Andrew, take this one, because since you were on mute willfully, but take this one.
Native Land Podcast. I feel so good about this week's episode. I'm not sure if I haven't listened well, but Tiffany and Andrew, like, you two really expressing why some of us did not find it humane to vote for Kamala Harris really touched me deeply. She's beyond overqualified. I think she was the best choice. I have to deal with the conscience that I did vote for her in New York City, but I knew I was doing it as a selfish American in the sense of self-preservation and risk reduction, especially after I saw a Trump rally in New York, which I didn't think was possible. However, I can't say I'm sad that she's not, in the sense of she aligns herself with genocide, but that does not mean she wasn't qualified. But thank you, guys.
Well, I think that was a comment. So the only thing I'll say is it is Kamala, the pronunciation of her name, and that's it for me.
Angela got something to say.
I just don't know what it's going to take for people to stop saying this. Like, she was on the stage. She's not just been on the stage with me. She's done a full book tour talking about where she feels like they've made a mistake. She was the first person in the Biden administration to call what was happening there a genocide. I don't understand why that's not penetrating. I certainly understand frustration, tensions being high, but I really don't like that. And
Possibly
I think
because when it mattered,
right,
that distinction wasn't there.
We were
and when
seeing
it mattered
babies
was
die.
when she was running for president and what her position was at the time.
I think
and I
that
think
even
it was
that's
even
hard.
further disappointing, at the convention when, and I know she didn't run every detail, every stop, every whatever, but at her convention, we didn't get to hear from the Palestinian speakers who wanted to take the podium, which on this show, we created a platform for it. But, this is a big tent party, and one big enough where the voices of people who were very directly affected by U.S. foreign policy wanted to make their opinions and expressions known to a larger audience, and the DNC would have created that. But I think, look, this is going to be a hard one for her to shake, because very few people are willing to accept that when you're that adjacent to power, you have your own power, but then you are that adjacent as a listening and sharing and thinking partner to the president. In U.S. policy, it did not translate that there was anything other than support for the Netanyahu regime and just the rod of death that has encircled that entire region.
I guess what I'm curious about is what people expected the vice president to do.
Well, when Joe Biden was vice president, he said he believes in gay marriage.
Let me just finish this. And she also did the same at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge before she was running. She did the same thing. So I'm not clear about this. And I also will say that she talks about in the book several closed door conversations where she voiced very clear opposition to what was happening. I would love for people to articulate what they believe a vice president can do other than disagree on messaging. What they believe the role of the vice president is in that situation.
But disagreeing on messaging when you're the vice president to a president who has a different position is a big deal.
She did that at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. She did. And I will
when
also
the light
say
was brightest on her as a candidate for president, I could not see daylight between she and President Biden.
There was daylight in her speech on the floor of the Democratic National Convention.
And I will tell you, we beg to differ.
And I will tell you that I also agree with you that it wasn't far enough. I do agree with that. And I will also tell you that she agrees with you and said as much in the book that she did not go far enough. So I agree on all of those points. What I don't agree with are the people who did not see. This man says in this question or in his comment that he couldn't believe there was a Trump rally in New York. Well, now we can't believe all these other things that are way far beyond a rally. And if you don't understand the distinction between a Donald Trump presidency and a Kamala Harris presidency, I don't know what to tell you. And yes, there is a lot of light between our positions.
I think he, so just to honor his point, I think he very much probably understands the difference. And I think it's really difficult to have frustration with people who saw the daily onslaught of atrocities that we saw, of imagery of hospitals being bombed, knowing that the United States was funding it, and having the responsibility to call out our leaders and say, yes, we demand more. And so if you're bombing people who look like me, if you're doing this to people who don't look like me, I want you to do everything possible to stop it, even if that means disrupting norms. So I don't have smoke for people who feel that level of pain, for dying children, dying men, dying women. That is clearly an ethnic cleansing, while some people were walking around with a shoulder shrug and indifference. I understand that level of humanity from folks. So I hear you, though, Angela. I think there is a responsibility to understand the policy of it. But I'm not mad at people who are conflicted and who still have a lot of frustration around it.
I'm sorry if it sounds at all like I'm mad at anybody. What I'm just saying is there is deep frustration for me personally. I don't want to project this on y'all, but to understand how vastly different they would be on these policies. The fact that Donald Trump has given cover to a war criminal in Netanyahu, currently in a corruption trial. Those are not her people. And she made that very
clear. Some of us would interpret that the previous administration also gave cover.
The previous administration did, but not Kamala Harris. So where there was distinction.
But she's in the administration.
She was. And the only way that there would have been any change is for her to have had an opportunity. And sadly, there was not. And again, I agree that she could have gone farther. She says in the book she could have gone farther, but she still articulated where there was difference. And I think what's unfortunate about it is not only did we not get difference, we got far worse with the administration that we have. And sadly, in this country, until there is not a two-party system, there were only two choices. And Kamala Harris by far was the better choice. I know we all believe that. As rough as this was, there were those of us who sat out of Christmas parties. We wrote letters letting them know that there was a lot going on with Gaza that we could not turn a blind eye to. Do not hear me say that I'm turning a blind eye to this suffering. But please hear me say that in a space where there were only two choices, or you could sit it out and you still made a choice.
But we talked about that though last week, Angela, where
and I guess we're going to talk about it
again.
No.
I mean, the point is I think while we may be voters who can consider the full range of the issues that may be at impact on the ballot, there's some people who have a smaller window by which they view these things. And what I mean by smaller is I don't mean pejorative. I just mean single issue.
A more narrow lens.
More narrow lens to what it is that they make these decisions on. And I get it. I try to, if I could force people to have to care about the range of it, I would, but we can't. And just because we can't, doesn't make necessarily their motivation for going to vote or not to vote the wrong or the right one.
It is frustrating, and I'll just tell y'all this too, and I know we have to wrap, to sit with her last week and to have not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but 6 folks protest her. Someone who, if they even read the articles, let's say they can't read the book, they read the articles about where she's at. Why are you not protesting Trump events? Why are you not protesting the Republican senators, the folks who have said that they will continue to get support from AIPAC donors? Why are you not protesting them? They're protesting someone who is essentially an ally. And honestly, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, was like, I want to have a roundtable discussion with some folks who are Palestinian leaders in this space so I can understand where else I may be able to lend my influence. She's that type of person. I've always known her to be that type of person.
That's good. So but I think part of the protesting, Angela, is that we go places where we think we may be heard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times are protest and where there is care. I ain't going to, you Trump can come through here all day long. I'm not going to, I don't care for him. He don't care for me. And my protests are not going to equal concern by him for the things in which I'm experiencing. So a lot of times when we've organized protests within our own movement circles, within our own community, we go to places where we think, one, there is care. You might see me as human just like you. And then 2, I expect more. And so I want to say that. And now we can get to then what happens after. But I think people make those choices very consciously. Like, this is where we're targeting. I remember I told you when I first got mayor and they protested me, I was like, I was just with y'all at the I bring food to you at night. This is and a third. Well, now I occupy a different space. Now you're the mayor and you represent a system. And that system is not gone just because you're here. It's continuing to thrive. So now it's on you. And I know you see me. I know you have love for me. And I know you care. And that's why I'm here demanding more. Whether that's the right tact, I don't know, or rather, I don't think it should be the only exclusive tact. I think you put heat on everybody, but I do know why people make those choices. And it's largely because you're going to a target who you think will see your humanity, who cares. And then 2, to say, I expect more.
I hear you.
Regardless of how people feel, I'm not dismissing anyone's feelings. Please fact check me on this because I haven't fact checked, but Angela and I were talking about this earlier. And I think, I have not fact checked, but I think this might be the only full broadcasted book conversation that she's had. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but you all please be sure to check it out on NLP's YouTube page. It was a really great conversation, and you can also see Angela's outfit, which I loved.
Oh God!
Thanks, Tiff. It was a repeat.
Privilege.
Just seen it before.
I know. You know what? Paris.
Yep.
Yes. I was like, yes, you better. I loved it.
Well, sadly, it's because, and Inga's going to kill me, but the Sergio outfits that I got, apparently I'm not tall enough to wear some of Sergio's pants. So I had some fashion fails and had to run that old thing back.
It looked great.
You know, sometimes you got to do that. Let me just tell you guys, I so appreciate you for stretching me, for stretching the audience, for stretching each other. I think it's so important that we always look not only at our politics, but policies and the impacts that it has on people's lives. And the one thing that you can rest assured that you're going to get on Native Land Pod is a policy consideration that centers people. And so I'm grateful for y'all, even when it sounds like I'm getting callous. Like, I got family that'll rope me back in, and I appreciate y'all even on this last question and this comment. Bakari, you were quiet. I don't know if you have anything before we wrap.
No, I'm just tired of relitigating the past. I look forward to talking about tomorrow.
Okay.
I
Well,
like
on
our
that-
disagreements.
That's a
I
big
think
pass.
it's good because we
That's a
rarely get to see
big-ass
that in
pass.
other places. So they
Yeah.
get to, we have some people call it nuance, but I don't even think our disagreements are nuanced. I think they are hardcore disagreement. But in other spaces, we get lumped in the same category. Like you're here to represent this person, but here we get to be free to explore ideology and ideas. So I do appreciate you guys for that.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to today's Native Land Pod episode. As always, we want to remind all of you to leave us a review and subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. If you're looking for more shows like ours, check out the other shows on our Reason Choice Media Networks, Politics with Jamel Hill, Hey Jay, Off the Cup with SC Cup, and Now You Know with Noah DeBarasso. Be sure to give those a follow, and don't forget to follow us too on social media and subscribe to our text or email list on nativelandpod.com. We are Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, Andrew Gillum, and Bakari Sellers. Welcome home, y'all. There are
Welcome home,
Reverse that
y'all.
order, please. Reverse that order.
There are
Bye, y'all.
350. Wait, Bakari. There are 356 days until midterm elections. Motherfucker got a nerve to be late and try
Thank
to leave
you.
early. Shut
And want
up.
to be first.
Hey, take a break.
Right.
Take a pop-out
We've
break.
been rapping for 37
Well,
minutes.
get used to it. Native.
It's like, God
This
damn.
is the last bumper. Be quiet. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.